Hey, it's Darren, and it's Friday, September the 12th, 2025. And I mentioned the date because there has been a lot that's happened this week. And people are, some people are losing their minds. People are yelling. People are screaming. And then there are people who are trying to find explanations to use what's been happening this week as a way to lead forward in a way that respects all human dignity and embraces responsibility for oneself and for the common good, like the common humanity, every single one of us, not tribalism, not us versus them. The challenge is that many people are very emotional right now. I am talking about Charlie Kirk. And what prompted today's video and thought was something I read that, first I'm going to say, I really admire by John Amici on LinkedIn and on Instagram. He wrote something and he termed it sonic libertarianism, where people feel that they have absolute freedom to say whatever they want without any repercussions, without any responsibility for the words they say. Now, I'm a firm believer that words themselves are not violent, but when you hear things and see things over and over again, those people who are saying things that are highly problematic might not go out and physically assault someone or hurt someone, but their words are going to trigger and inspire those people who are more inclined to do so. So I want to read just a couple of things from this longer post that's like a slide carousel from John. He wrote the overview: when societies tolerate rhetoric without responsibility, brutality becomes predictable. Now, before I read any more, I want to say that he doesn't say anything bad about Charlie Kirk. He doesn't directly blame him. He recognizes in another post the difficulty of the family who have lost their father. What's important is this one paragraph that he writes: we live in an age of what I call sonic libertarianism, a cultural condition where people feel entitled to speak whenever they wish, in whatever manner they wish, regardless of accuracy or consequence. It is framed as the purest form of free speech, but in practice, it rewards volume over substance. The loudest and most persistent voices dominate. Cautious or thoughtful contributors are pushed aside, and poor quality, evidence-free ideas thrive unchecked. Now, there's quite a bit more of really valuable information in here. I'll include the link to this post. But somebody commented, and it challenged me to reply in a thoughtful way to get to the bottom of things. And immediately this person came out of the gate and said, "What an appalling post, John. You should feel ashamed." A bit of back and forth, and without going into all the details, this person has an idea of what they think is right and has an idea of how they think John should feel about the situation, which is not being met. So this commenter, it feels terrible and looked up to this person, Charlie Kirk, and is not seeing what he is expecting to see in John, which is not fair. You cannot expect anyone to say something that you want to say yourself. You cannot expect someone to feel what you are feeling. So I invited this person to say what they want to say publicly on their profile, instead of blaming or shaming someone else for something that is not John's responsibility. Now, this long introduction is what got me thinking about blame versus personal responsibility. And I'm thinking of a title for this. When the shit hits the fan, do you blame others or do you take personal responsibility? So if you're watching me on video, I've got a lot of notes and I want to make sure I go through the sequence here. So let me try and frame this as carefully as I can, since this distinction between blame and personal responsibility is important and really helpful in understanding and situating ourselves as leaders, and especially as queer leaders to us LGBTQIA plus leaders, because, for example, Charlie Kirk was someone who threw queer people under the bus. His words were literally trying to throw people under a moving bus, okay? So blame it's backward facing. It's looking into the past. It is about assigning fault for something that's already happened, blaming someone. It involves judgment, shame, punishment. It focuses on who caused the problem or who is in the wrong, who's at fault. And this leads to defensiveness or avoidance rather than growth, change, personal understanding, or reflection in the moment about whatever situation is happening. So when we extrapolate, people who are very much stuck in the past will more often tend to blame others for their situation in life, or blame a situation, their upbringing, their lack of income, their abusive parents. Now, and that's not to discount those things in the past. Absolutely not. But if you're constantly backwards facing, you never look into yourself to determine how can you move forward. This also does not, what I'm saying does not reject people who are who really need the help, medical care or a psychologist or caring individuals who can help them work through past trauma. That's real, that deserves respect, and that deserves support. I believe that people that are firmly entrenched in religious dogma, religious fundamentalism, but also political ideologies, far-right, rigid, dogmatic ideologies, are also backwards facing, because most of those people are looking to, for example, this is what was written 2,000 years ago in the Bible, yet the Bible is not a consistent text. There are so many variations and challenges with translation that any modern Bible today is not a true and accurate reflection of what was written in those texts many years ago, let alone the whole question of veracity, who wrote it, and, in my opinion, a fictitious being in the sky. What we're seeing in the States right now, what we're seeing in Russia, what we're seeing in many other countries, is this idea of the great state, the great nation, making the nation great again, getting out all of those people or bad influences that have created this terrible situation today. We want to go back to the way things were. And the only way you can go back to the way things were intellectually is to start assigning blame to those groups of people who you think are the root cause of the problem. Now, let's take a breath and look at personal responsibility. I am a massive advocate for personal responsibility. It has been a key it has been really the thing in my life. I have faced challenges where I've recognized, I slipped. I wasn't taking complete responsibility for what I said, how I was thinking, and it's a constant process. It does not need to be viewed as something negative. But my understanding of leadership is that personal responsibility is the roots of what is going to make you the kind of leader that embraces compassion, humility, open-mindedness, and walking alongside people as opposed to trying to power over them. So, by way of explaining personal responsibility, it is forward facing. It's going in the other direction. All right. It's about taking ownership of your role or position, let's say in a career or how other people see you. It's about taking ownership for your choices, the things you do, your actions, and your capacity, your ability to respond. And that means, I'll speak from personal experience, it's been very easy to in a snap react and say something that is emotionally heated but isn't necessarily logical or well thought out or compassionate or understanding of all the nuances of the situation. So, in the form of a question, responsibility would ask something like this: what part of this situation is mine to own, to take care of, to learn from, and then to act on? And you ask that question without falling into shame or deflecting your responsibility onto something or someone else. Personal responsibility is the acknowledgement of the reality of the circumstances, the situation in which you find yourself, or the situations that brought you into this moment, and your agency, your sovereignty within them. Even if you didn't cause the situation, your agency is what you can do, how you can think through what you are going to do about it. So these require a number of commitments, and the biggest one is critical thinking, taking the time. And this is the thing, this is the slow process. Someone like a Charlie Kirk in interviews was quick, and he had his sound bites and he had his arguments memorized and just bam, bam, bam. Someone like that who has a talent for rhetoric makes it very difficult for many other people that want to take time to listen to an opposing side that they find very problematic and consider a cautioned, a thoughtful response. Going back to the thing that John said in the last sentence I read, evidence-free ideas thrive unchecked. It takes time to find the facts and the evidence to substantiate sometimes our arguments, for critical thinking, for remaining open-minded, to express compassion and humility when other people are just throwing polarizing sound bites and statements at us at such a rapid fire and disruptive and interrupting fashion that doesn't give the thoughtful person the time to really clearly express what it is they're thinking. So the core question, sort of said this already, of personal responsibility is, if I take this action, how will that affect others? Because every action we take is also going to have an effect on us, right? So all the things you've said and done in your life, this sounds really ominous, so they're going to come back to haunt you. On the extreme end, just to make it clear, if it needs to be made clear, no one deserves to be killed. No one deserves to be assassinated, in my opinion. But people, I believe, need to recognize that if they're going to cause harm to others, to blame others for a situation in which they could find an alternative through personal responsibility to make changes that respect the dignity of humanity, there are going to be consequences. And there are going to be consequences, whether that be legal consequences, somebody being completely canceled, somebody losing a job, somebody losing friends, family, relationships, or what is very difficult to control, an individual who can no longer control their anger and has access to a weapon and hurts or kills another person. So I want to wrap things up there with two very short summaries of blame and responsibility. So blame says, in general, you are at fault. The right wing right now, the people who think in very fundamentalist terms of right versus wrong, binary terms, the people that are very much against trans inclusion, trans human life, and all other aspects of gay, lesbian, bisexuality, pronouns, intersex, they say you're at fault. You're the person who is at fault for everything. And they'll find a way to label a small group, a small percentage of the population. And when they've done enough harm to that group or eradicated or eliminated that group, they go on to the next one. Responsibility, personal responsibility says, this is my issue. This is mine to carry, to own, to address. For all the problems in the world right now, we cannot take them all on. I have chosen to address the issues around LGBTQ, 2S, LGBTQIA+. Most simply, I like to say queer people who deserve the respect and the dignity and the freedom to live their lives how they wish, to identify however they wish, and to be seen as incredible contributors to society and transforming society to be an open-minded, open-hearted, evolving society that takes care of itself and the planet upon which we find ourselves, because many of us of queer people have been, in a way, forced into the personal responsibility to self-reflect, to take care of ourselves when we have found ourselves unsure of if we can freely be ourselves in various situations, in various environments, around various people. And that has made us very aware, sensitive to, and thoughtful about injustice in the world. Not all of us, I'm not speaking for every single queer person, but many of us who had this experience of growing up and seeing in the status quo people are acting this way, but I don't fit in there. I don't know how to navigate, how to move forward. Many of us have found the queer path forward to coexist. But personal responsibility says, for me, I don't want to coexist. I just want to exist. So, do I want to say more? I actually have quite a little bit more to talk about, but I'm going to save it for another video. So I might have a second or a third part to talk about this here. But I would love your feedback on thoughts about blame versus personal responsibility, how that dichotomy, how you've been dealing with that in this past week and in these past several weeks with everything that's been going on in the world? Have you been blaming a country or a leader for what's happening, or a group of people? Or have you stepped up and said, enough? Blaming isn't going to make a fucking difference. What does make a difference is how I think, how I manage my emotions, how I support other people, and most importantly, how I take care of myself so that I can show up in a meaningful and caring, careful way to make a difference for what I believe will create social transformation for the betterment of all humanity.